Finally tonight, the launch of a special NewsHour series on China, its emergence as a world economic power and the challenges ahead. Our economics correspondent, Paul Salmon of WGBH Boston, is our guide for the reports. They will air periodically over the days ahead. Part 1, The Boom.
Traditional China, still on display in modern Beijing. Tai Chi, calligraphy practice using Chairman Mao's poems and his penmanship, a daily song to welcome the dawn. And yet, almost every week, an old neighborhood is razed to the ground to make way for sci-fi skylines, hip new clubs, Mao as merchandise, every luxury product you can think of, sometimes real, often not. With more than twice as many people as the U.S. and Europe combined, this is the most populous, fastest growing major economy in world history. Will the good times just keep rolling? When you first arrive, it would certainly seem so.
Welcome to Pudong Shangri-La Tower 2.
Just about to open in Shanghai, a second tower of the Hotel Shangri-La with 375 new rooms.
And what's the top of the line there?
Well, the top of the line, we are going to have the top suite will be at $4,500 US.
A night.
A night.
To General Manager Philippe Coretti, an Italian-Swiss who's worked in a dozen countries for the hotel chain, Shanghai's the hub of the new global economy. So he's hired a dozen international chefs, backed up by hundreds of workers, to contribute native specialties to the global feast.
And he's the grandson of the man who invented the noodles. 3 minutes and we have fresh noodles. We currently have a total of 1,800 contractors and workers finishing the building.
1,800 people.
Working 3 shifts per day around the clock. And this actually reflects very much the drive and dynamics of China.
You know, a number of interactions we've had.
Yes.
I don't want to say lazy, but a slow kind of pace, an old sort of bureaucratic mentality maybe. I couldn't tell, but not in your hotel.
Not in our hotel, and to be honest with you, not in Shanghai. Shanghai has a drive that no other city in China has.
Well, except maybe at noon on a 100-degree day. But part of what's so remarkable is that for centuries, much of the Chinese economy had been sound asleep. Since the late 70s, however, China's economy has doubled every 8 years. In that same period, the U.S. economy has doubled once. Today, average Chinese have some 10 times the purchasing power they had just a quarter century ago. At this rate, China reaches our current level in about 2 decades, passes us in about 3, which may explain the sky's the limit sound bites we kept getting on tape.
I will be the most successful women in the Chinese history.
Just like your President Lincoln, I also want to do something big for Beijing and for China.
There is no terrorism. Tell me one country today which is safer than China, and I invite you for lunch.
The boom in Chinese self-confidence is mirrored in the rise of its skylines. You see it in the sprawling profile of Beijing, seat of the central government, and in Shanghai, China's money and media capital, home to the Grand Hyatt Hotel, floors 53 to 87, in a building taller than the Empire State or Sears Tower, and the Oriental Pearl, which dwarfs the Eiffel Tower. On a clear day, though there aren't many here, you can see more than 300 skyscrapers in Shanghai. In 1985, there was one. But according to this tour guide at the city's Urban Planning Museum, the building boom has barely begun.
All of here is Shanghai, but it's only 1/60th of Shanghai, the downtown of Shanghai.
1/60th or 1/16th?
60.
Oh, 1/60th.
Yes.
Really? So the city goes on and on and on.
Yes.
And how many people are here now?
Now, in the model area, the population is 8 million people.
And in all of Shanghai?
All of Shanghai is 16 million people.
And Shanghai's got plenty of company. By the most conservative count, China now boasts 47 cities with at least 1 million people. The U.S., using the same measure, has 9. However, 60% of Chinese still live down on the farm. 1 out of every 8 people in the world is a Chinese peasant. And each year, some 20 million of them leave the countryside for the city to get jobs, as at 3Gun, China's largest textile factory.
There's not much work in the country, unless you want to work in the fields.
At current rates, then, by the year 2020, China's cities should add some 300 million newcomers, more than the entire population of the U.S. To house them, China has to build a couple of extra Shanghais every single year. It's planning to.
The colorless building exist, and the white building is to be built in the future.
And that's all planned already?
Yes.
Meanwhile, our tour guide has her own plans of what to be when she grows up.
Director of City Planning Bureau.
The director of the City Planning Bureau.
Yes.
That's a big job in Shanghai.
Yeah, yes, I think so. It's a huge job.
A very huge job, made possible in part because so many are willing to work for so little. Philippe Coretti pays his crew about 80 cents an hour, the lowest wage, he says, of any of the 17 countries in which the Shangri-La chain operates.
The quality of the work, I mean the expertise comparing to a worker in the US, of course the levels are not as professional, but the passion and the fact of having a job, to be able to build a 5-star hotel, the Shanghainese are very, very proud people. And everybody in this city is participating to the success of China, and that's how they see it.
In the factories, the pay's a bit higher, about $1.25 an hour, including benefits, according to the management at 3Gun Textiles. Now, manufacturing has taken China's total trade past that of Japan, and today, to the surprise of many, it's second only to the U.S. But more significantly, perhaps, China is moving up the value chain, with higher-tech exports like computer chips being loaded onto this Danish ship headed to the U.S. flying the Chinese flag. Last year, Shanghai surpassed Rotterdam to become the world's second busiest port. This model of the city's new deep-sea docks, to be reachable by the world's longest bridge, will become a working reality in a few years. When it does, Shanghai will overtake Singapore and become the world's biggest port, bar none. But China's not just manufacturing for export. The domestic market has exploded as well, meaning that investing in China is a no-brainer for multinationals looking to grow their brands. The head of Walmart Asia, Joe Hatfield.
Average incomes are going up, car ownership is going up. I mean, you're seeing what occurred in the U.S. 30, 40 years ago, but in a much more compressed time frame.
At this school for children of workers at a Shanghai semiconductor plant, the consumers and producers of the future are getting a global head start.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
The company's kindergarten teacher, John Pellissier.
All of these kids are growing up learning at least 2 languages, at least Chinese and English, and that's, I believe, a great advantage.
All the way from A to Z.
Oh, good job! Good job.
For some perspective, we turn to an old China hand. Jim McGregor, formerly the Wall Street Journal's bureau chief in China, now a businessman.
It's an accident in history this place was ever communist, and they're capitalists down to their bone marrow. China's hungry and come from nothing, and they've still got a lot of poor people here who are lining up to work hard and be the next person that makes money, and that's going to last for decades and decades and decades.
But will it really? No slowdowns? No bumps in the road? Yes, a powerful central government has unleashed immense productive energy, but the hurdles are equally immense. It's not just the obvious irony of the world's biggest communist country ever creating in some ways the most freewheeling market in world history. It's also that the world's biggest country faces a pack of the world's biggest problems, trying to innovate in a repressive culture, trying to privatize property in an economy where intellectual property is so famously pirated, trying to invest productively where corruption runs rampant, bringing the stock market, for example, to a standstill, trying to find work for millions of unskilled peasants from the countryside in factories ever more mechanized, trying to keep growing at a pace that, in a few decades, would mean China is consuming all the output, iron, oil, food, cars, clothing, etc., all of what the world consumes right now, just trying to breathe, for goodness sake, in a country with 16 of the world's 20 most polluted cities. And yet, China's spirit is infectious, its economic energy practically viral.
I thought it's hard to get stuff done in China.
It's hard.
Hard to get stuff done in China.
It's easy. Everything is easy because you have the human resources.
In future stories, then, we'll explore the question, is the American century about to be followed by the Chinese millennium? Or could it be that China, at the moment, is flying a little too high?
We'll have another of Paul's reports later this week. The next one is about Chinese consumers.